The directing talk is actually really short if you hire a voice director. Step 1, hire a voice director. Done. Waiting for the voice director to appear so I can get a nap. I would say I'm eligible for hire, but paradoxically, I'm teaching everyone else how to do this stuff, so I'm actually kind of busy. All right. Gonna get started now. And a 1, and a 2. What's up, gamers? My name is Cody, and welcome to part 1 of my Working with Voice Actors series here on DevTalk. Voice acting is not strictly required to make a visual novel, but having it adds a layer of depth and polish that can help your game stand out from the rest of the crowd. Icing on the cake. Giving it the drip, as it were. The goal of this series is to get you familiar with that process, and even if you aren't looking to add voice acting quite yet, hopefully it puts you, as director of a team, into the mindset of working better with others and making their jobs as easy as possible. So who am I, and why should you care? Great questions! First off, I'm Cody. We've been over that. Hello, I run a small YouTube channel called Maho Studio. We did RPG Maker content for about 4 years, including my comedy isekai series Defeat the Darkness, filmed entirely in RPG Maker, for which I handled casting and directing, as well as hosting a 50-plus episode run of game design podcasts called the RPG Maker General Podcast, later called Maho Indie Spotlight. More recently, I voiced Jack in Last Meal at Cafe Mori, which placed second overall in the judging for the Spooktober 2020 Jam, and for my work as Jack, I won Best Monster Voice Performance in Spooktober Jam. You'll be hearing a lot more about Cafe Mori later in the talk. For this year's Winter Jam, I was voice director for How We Show Love, which is another thoughtful existential game where I once again worked with my Cafe Mori compatriot Coda, who once again did an amazing job with her voice work. You'll be hearing more about this game when I do the directing talk in week 3. Over the last 8 years, I've become very accustomed to working alongside talented people on nonprofit projects, both leading and following, both long-term and short-term. When you're doing creative work, your goal is to entertain an audience, even if that audience is just yourself, which often means you rely on the elements of novelty and surprise. When leading a team of creatives, be they voice actors or writers or composers or jugglers, your goal now switches to the opposite, to reduce novelty and surprise, to create consistency and focus for your team, so their mental effort is put into making the game and not into handling a bunch of odd distractions. The more distractions you can remove from your team's field of view, and the more effectively you communicate your vision, the higher quality work they will be able to produce, especially in a short time frame, such as this game jam. You get one shot at your public audition thread, and you want to look professional. Good preparation leads to good presentation. Right now, there are a number of things you can do to both make yourself look more professional when you do start casting, and to make both you and your voice actors' jobs easier when it's time to get lines recorded. You wouldn't leave home without putting your shoes on first, unless you're a hobbit, so let's get you ready for an unforgettable journey. For this talk, I have spoken to many casting directors and voice actors. The number one thing you can do before you acquire any voice talent is the following. Lock in your script. The words you have are the words your actors will be saying. There will be no ambiguity, no rewrites, no, hey, can you redo the scene for me real quick? I just added some cool jokes to make it better and I need it by tomorrow to get it into the game. None of that. You are done fiddling with it. Their job is clear. They are free to do their job. Consistency. Imagine if you hired a character artist, and after they believe they're done designing the main character, you say, you know what? This character really needs a purple jacket. And now your artist has to restart their entire creative process and begin this extra work that they did not expect for you for free. Also, imagine if you called up your friend and said, hey, I'm running a birthday party for my little cousin. Can you come? It's going to be over at Applebee's. And can you swing by the store real quick and pick up a My Little Pony present? They love My Little Pony. So they get dressed, they grab the gift, they're on their way to Applebee's, and you call again, like, oh, sorry, change of plans. Birthday is at Chuck E. Cheese now across town. And the My Little Pony, It has to be Luna. Princess Luna. The blue pony. Get the blue one. Now, 2 things. 1, do you think your friend is excited to help you out now? And number 2, if they didn't pick Luna at the store, how likely do you think they are to just take a blue Sharpie to this horse? If you absolutely have to change your script after it's locked in, then a little courtesy goes a long way. After all, who's providing who with free labor for this game? Just own up to it up front like, hey, I forgot I needed this. Or, the story makes no sense until we add this line. All the way up to, we realize this might come off as offensive and want to cover our asses before we accidentally become the main character of Twitter. And then you give them the changes and you thank them for their time. Simple. If you find yourself doing this often, don't worry. Yet. We all start somewhere. Game jams are how you learn these skills, and as long as you do better next time, then the community would love to keep you around for next time. Just remember to show gratitude and to build that positive reputation going forward. After you are sure your script is finished, send it off to your proofreaders if you have any. Double check it, triple check it, shoulder check it, hip check it, whatever you have to do. It's better to spend an hour now on another look than to spend an hour next week writing apologies and freaking out at whether you'll get the new lines before you have to ship the game. Now that's done. With your script locked in, how much voice acting do you plan to do? There's many ways to do this, but it's often split into one specific category and one not specific at all category. Partial voice acting and full voice acting. Full voice acting is exactly what it says on the tin. Every single line from every single character in every single scene will be voiced. This is the most labor-intensive, but also the least ambiguous. You know exactly what you have to do. There's just a whole hell of a lot of it. If you have a longer game, this may not be feasible even for a 2-month game jam, unless you have a dedicated voice director and a separate dedicated sound engineer. Someone has to implement these lines after all, and that's beyond the scope of these talks. If you plan to do full voice acting for Otome Jam, make sure your script is final no later than the 3rd week. This gives you 5 other whole weeks to handle casting, recording, implementation, retakes if necessary, as well as all of your team's other responsibilities. If full voice acting doesn't sound feasible, it's probably not, then your visual novel will likely utilize partial voice acting. What's that? Literally any amount of voice acting between 1% and 99%. It's not voiced, and it's not fully voiced. Super useful metric, I know. The first Danganronpa game uses what are called barks or chirps for the exploration segments, and switches to full voice acting for the exciting trial segments. In a nutshell, barks are basically a character expressing an emotion which can be recycled over and over and over again for the times the character says something that expresses that emotion. This girl's name is Aoi, but she is best girl, so we don't wish her any pain. This is a quick example of how chirps can be utilized. Every time she's talking with the player casually, like in the top left, the voice actor doesn't have to say the whole line. She can just say, "Hey." This reduces the voice acting workload and places emphasis on the trials, where emotions are high and you want to add to the excitement with full voice acting. In How We Show Love, the text message segments were not voiced, but the scene where Ola and Shersha are talking in person is fully voiced, as well as the phone call between Shersha and Willow. This was both narrative and functional. Voice lines are used when the characters are actually speaking. It also saved us from the work of adding voice acting to half the game. I cannot tell you the perfect way to do voice acting for your project, but I can tell you that you'll find a high degree of success if you focus on important characters and important moments. Adding barks or chirps for the rest is cool, but not necessary. Now that you know what voice work needs to be done, you're ready to seek out the technical side of voice work if you haven't already. This would be your casting director, your voice director, and your audio engineer. A casting director handles casting for the project. A voice director works with the cast to record their lines. An audio engineer processes the recorded lines and implements them into your game project. These people should be easier to attract now because you've clearly established how much work they need to do. Setting clear goals and expectations, in voice acting or any other department, makes you look like a professional. Speaking of goals and expectations, these should be reinforced in the script document itself. There's more to setting up a script than just the spoken lines. It helps to have an easy way to organize and present this information, and for that, I'm pleased to offer a successful example. This is part of the final script from Cafe Mori, second place Booktober Jam 2020, sourced directly from the blog of the exquisite developer Katie133. It's publicly viewable, and there's way more good info about her process available if you check it out. You'll notice that the final script is not in a Google document. It is in a Google Sheet, a distinct and important difference. In a Google Sheet, you are given several powerful tools not available in a simple document. Tabs, rows, columns, and the combination of rows and columns, the cells. Let's go over each. The script for Cafe Mori is broken down by scene. Each scene is in its own tab. Because most of the characters only show up in one scene, this more or less breaks down the game by an actor's assigned role. The witch only needs to view the tab for the witch. I, as Jack, only need to access the tab for Jack. Robin talks with each of them, and her voice actor would therefore have to read through every tab regardless. Your tabs might work better differently. For Katie, most of her characters only showed up in one scene each, so it made sense to organize the tabs by scene. For a game where characters show up in multiple scenes, it may make sense to break up the script by role instead. So, one tab for all of Billy's lines, one for all of Mandy's lines, etc. On that subject, cells can be colored individually, which helps to quickly highlight who is speaking. This is an exceptionally efficient way for voice actors to realize what needs to be recorded. In a game with partial voice acting, like How We Show Love, you might upload the full script for viewing in context, but highlight the lines that need to be spoken. There are many wonderful creative uses for highlighting. Next, we'll talk about rows. This is real simple. Rows are numbered. When your actors are recording their lines, it's very easy for them to ask you about, say, line 13, instead of typing out the line verbatim and asking you to find it alongside all associated context. With the numbering system, the line is easy to find, and the context is easy to establish. You're speaking the same language much more quickly. On the subject of columns, on the subject of context, columns. I love columns. I love how Katie has a whole column dedicated to the context of each line. We did not do live direction for Cafe Mori, so instead Katie provided her talent with as much detail as possible about the scene and the inner thoughts of the characters involved. This is the next best thing. Give your voice actors everything you can give them, because they're not inside your head. We'll cover this more in the directing talk, but just know that right now, you can put context on lines and make everyone's job easier once recording starts. Your future self, and your future voice actors, will thank you. Now that your script is finished, polished, proofread, formatted, and uploaded to the cloud, it's ready to hand off to voice actors who have everything they need to deliver an outstanding performance and allow their talents and your game to shine. The next step is to actually cast them. And I hope to see you next week when we formally go over that process. Thank you. Thank you, please clap. What a cliffhanger, yeah! Please like and subscribe. Come back next time. I'm so glad you all enjoyed it. Yeah, this was just a quick and dirty little one to cover all the basics, and hopefully, you know, it's more killer than filler. This is something you can come back to and refresh yourself with the important things you need. Let's see. All right, a question. Is it okay if all the voice acting for a game is just chirps and barks? Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that there's RPG Maker games that do this too, and barks and chirps alone still add more to a scene than having nothing, you know? I think that's important to remember, is that any amount of extra polish over 0 is still more polish you have than someone else. Even if it doesn't seem like much from like a short-term perspective, long-term, your game will have more appeal than another game simply by having that extra layer of attraction and of interest. If The Sims and AC still use fun noises, anyone can. See, I saw AC, I thought you meant Assassin's Creed, but no, Animal Crossing. Yeah, Animal Crossing and The Sims are great examples. They are just barks and chirps. They are also exceptionally comfy games. You mentioned the script being locked in. In the game Our Life, they had an option where Patreon backers' first names were voiced in-game. If you wanted to implement that, would you need to have a deadline for Patreon backers? So Sid, I've been following Our Life on Twitter, and they have on at least one occasion recorded packs. They've recorded voice packs. So yes, they would need a deadline. You would also need to keep the voice actor on call, like, hey, we got 249 names from our Patreon backers. Can you record these, please? So they record them, and, like, obviously you have to tell your backers, like, this is the deadline. You give the voice actor for, I believe the main character's name is Cove. You give Cove all 249 names, reads them off, and then if anyone's after the deadline, like, okay, well, you're kind of past the deadline. When we get, another 50 or so names, we'll release pack 2, we'll patch the game, we'll bring it back. So, yes, you do want a deadline, and what the Our Life devs have done, which is really smart, is that they have retained that voice actor, so when more names are requested, they can pop them into the booth for, for an hour or two, pay him a couple $100, rattle off those names too, and then keep it going. So, yes, deadlines are important. Once you start getting into the high-level production, you're going to see a lot of hurry up and wait. You're going to see a lot of deadlines, because things can happen if they happen before a certain time, and then all of the pieces move, and then they stop. Hurry up and wait. Is it okay to encourage voice actors to improvise lines? Question to your question. Are you okay with rewriting your game? Because if they improvise a line and you like it, now it has to go into the game. And if you're the one in charge, like, you have to manage that supply chain and make sure that it happens. I do like when people improvise lines, because it tells me that they care about the character. They're not just doing it as a job. They're doing it because they're invested in the product. They're invested in seeing you succeed. So if you have the ability to accommodate it, I would highly suggest doing so. Yeah, there was one time in Defeat the Darkness where I had an actor, and they're like, dude, the way he played the character was not exactly how I wrote it, but I still liked it. So I changed a couple things in the script. I'm like, yo, can you record these real quick? He was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, awesome. So I actually changed the script because I liked someone's performance. Oh, that is a good question. What tips do you have for directing VAs who have no previous VA experience? A lot of people that I'm working with for Road to May Jam are very enthusiastic but have never acted before. Okay. So is this your friends? Is that what this is? Because I had to do this for Defeat the Darkness. Like, my buddy Adam, my co-star, I directed him. I also directed 2 of my other friends who are in the show. And I mean, like, I wrote those roles to play to their strengths. So that was actually the writing stage where that started, but continue typing. I'm not personally directing them, they're friends, mostly being alongside them, but I'm an actor by trade. They're coming to me for tips. Okay, Andy, if you are not their director, then I cannot tell you anything to tell them. The purpose of this talk is basically to get game developers speaking the same language as voice actors. This is a bit more niche than actually learning how to voice act. Because if you want to learn how to voice act, you can go on YouTube right now, and you'll find like 55 tutorials. And you just got to make them sit down and watch one. I highly recommend Soul Brother number 3. I love his format because he'll get through everything in 10 minutes or less. Like, here's the important stuff, and rewatch it if you have to. It's all there. Oh, the suspense is killing me. I just see people are typing like, what's gonna come out, man? It's like Jeopardy in reverse. I just want you to say, hey, gamers. Chile, no, I'm sorry, that's not the line. That's not the line, Chile. Why are people still joining? It's over. Welcome, Elm. I hate to do this to you. Elm, I'm sorry. Summarize. I will send you the transcript. But otherwise, here's your summary. Here's your summary. See all this? See all this dumb stuff with no context? That's because I read my script out loud, like a good PowerPoint person does. This is what I have on my screen. It doesn't make any sense without the script. I'm sorry. Here, I'm gonna leave it on Kate Archer in a shitty jacket. Thank you all so much for coming. There will be another talk at this time next week, 1 p.m. PST, Saturday. Be there when we go over the casting process. We're going to cover scouting versus a casting call. We're going to cover demo reels. We're going to cover your audition lines. We're going to cover what you should tell a voice actor before they audition. If you have any questions at all about casting, either put them here or DM me, and that way I can work them into next week's talk. I look forward to seeing you all then. What's up, gamers? It's over. Go home. Thank you all for coming.